The sun was setting over the Montana prairie when Hunter Wallace first saw the small figure on the horizon. At first, he thought it might be a lost calf or maybe a prairie dog standing tall. But as he rode closer on his bay mare, something twisted in his stomach. Those weren't animal movements. That was a child, barely more than a baby, stumbling through the tall grass with something clutched tight in his tiny hands. Hunter dismounted before his horse even stopped moving. The little boy couldn't have been more than 5 years old, with dirt-streaked cheeks and clothes that hung loose on his thin frame. His hair was the color of wheat, matted with dust and sweat, and his eyes were the bluest Hunter had ever seen. But it was the fear in those eyes that made Hunter's chest tighten. Pure, bone-deep terror, like a wild animal caught in a trap. "Hey there, little fella," Hunter said softly, the way he might approach a spooked horse. "What are you doing out here all by yourself?" The child took a shaky step backward, nearly tripping over his own feet. In his small fist, he clutched a piece of paper, wrinkled and damp with sweat. They said you'd take me in," the boy whispered, his voice barely audible over the evening wind. "But they were laughing when they put me on the wagon. They were laughing real hard." Hunter felt something cold crawl up his spine. "Who was laughing, son? Who brought you here?" But before the child could answer, his eyes rolled back and his knees buckled. Hunter lunged forward, catching the tiny body before it hit the ground. The boy was burning up with fever, his clothes soaked through with sweat, and Hunter could feel every rib through the thin fabric of his shirt. "Jesus," Hunter muttered, gathering the child in his arms. The boy weighed almost nothing, like holding a bundle of sticks wrapped in cloth. The crumpled paper fell from the child's grasp, and Hunter snatched it up with his free hand. Even in the fading light, he could make out the scrawled handwriting, and what he read made his blood run cold. "Hunter Wallace," the note began, "you owe me for what happened in Abilene 3 years back. Remember how you testified against me? Cost me 6 months in that stinking jail. Well, here's your payment with interest. This here's my dead sister's boy, Tommy. He's been nothing but trouble since the fire took his folks. Figured you might appreciate the joke. You always did think you were better than the rest of us. Take care of this burden or don't. Makes no difference to me. Jake Morrison." Hunter stared at the paper, his hands shaking with rage. Jake Morrison. He remembered the man well enough. A drunk and a cheat who'd been running a crooked card game in Abilene. Hunter had been a deputy sheriff back then, and when Jake had knifed a farmer over a losing hand, Hunter had been the one to drag him to court. But this? Using a child for revenge? Even for Jake, this was low. The boy stirred in Hunter's arms, mumbling something about water. Hunter looked down at the small face, peaceful now in unconsciousness, and felt something shift inside his chest. This wasn't the child's fault. None of this was Tommy's doing. He was just a pawn in his uncle's twisted game. Hunter carried Tommy to his horse, awkwardly mounting while holding the fevered child. The ride back to his cabin took 20 minutes, but it felt like hours. Tommy's breathing was shallow and quick, and every now and then he would cry out in his sleep, calling for his mama or begging someone not to leave him. Inside his small log cabin, Hunter laid the boy on his own bed, the only soft place in the sparse room. He'd never had cause for extra furniture, never expected to need it. Now he found himself wishing he had a proper bedroom for a child, maybe some toys or picture books. Instead, all he had was a single bed, a rough wooden table, 2 chairs, and a stone fireplace that threw dancing shadows on the walls. Hunter built up the fire and set water to boil. He doctored plenty of sick cattle and horses over the years, but a child was different. Everything about Tommy seemed fragile, like he might break if handled too roughly. Hunter wet a cloth with cool water and gently wiped the dirt from the boy's face, revealing pale skin and a spray of freckles across his nose. "What did they do to you, little man?" Hunter whispered. Up close, he could see that Tommy's clothes, while dirty and too big, had once been fine quality. His small hands were soft, not the rough, calloused hands of a working child. This boy had been cared for once, loved once, before whatever tragedy had left him with Jake Morrison. As the night wore on, Hunter kept vigil beside the bed. He managed to get some water into Tommy, drop by drop, and the boy's fever seemed to break a little. Around midnight, Tommy's eyes fluttered open, and he stared up at Hunter with confusion and fear. Where? Where am I? Tommy's voice was hoarse but surprisingly clear. Despite his obvious exhaustion, he spoke like a child much older than 5. You're safe, Hunter said simply. I'm Hunter Wallace. Your Uncle Jake left you a note saying I should look after you. Tommy's face crumpled, and tears spilled down his cheeks. He said you were mean. He said you'd probably leave me for the wolves to eat. But he was drinking again, and he kept laughing about it. Hunter felt his jaw clench. I'm not going to leave you anywhere, son. And I'm not mean, not to children who haven't done anything wrong. Are you going to send me back to Uncle Jake? Tommy asked, his voice barely a whisper. Hunter looked at the small, frightened face and made a decision that would change both their lives forever. No, Tommy, I'm not sending you anywhere. You're going to stay right here with me until we figure out what's best for you. For the first time since Hunter had found him, Tommy smiled. It was just a small thing, barely there, but it was real. Can I have some more water, please? And maybe something to eat? I haven't eaten since yesterday morning. Hunter's heart clenched. Of course, son. Let me get you fixed up. As Hunter moved around his small kitchen, heating up leftover stew and cutting thick slices of bread, he found himself thinking about Jake Morrison's cruel joke. The man had sent his own nephew out into the wilderness, hoping Hunter would reject the child or worse. But looking at Tommy, now sitting up in bed with color returning to his cheeks, Hunter realized something. Jake might have meant this as punishment, but he'd actually given Hunter something precious. Something Hunter hadn't even known he wanted until this moment. The little boy was already starting to trust him, already looking to him for protection and care. And Hunter found that he wanted to be worthy of that trust. For the first time in his 35 years of life, Hunter Wallace was thinking about someone other than himself. The cruel trick had backfired in the most beautiful way possible. Hunter woke up before dawn, the way he had for 20 years. But this morning was different. This morning, there was a small boy sleeping in his bed, curled up like a kitten with his thumb stuck in his mouth. Tommy looked so peaceful that Hunter almost didn't want to wake him. But the sun was coming up, and there were chores to do, and Hunter had no idea what to feed a 5-year-old for breakfast. He tried to be quiet as he built up the fire and started the coffee, but Tommy stirred anyway. Those bright blue eyes opened slowly, and for a moment the boy looked confused. Then he sat up quickly, looking around the cabin with wide eyes. It's okay, Hunter said softly. You're still safe. You remember me? I'm Hunter. Tommy nodded, but he didn't say anything. He just watched Hunter move around the small kitchen, his eyes following every movement like he was trying to figure something out. Hunter had never cooked for anyone but himself. His usual breakfast was black coffee, maybe some leftover biscuits if he had any. But looking at Tommy's thin face, he knew that wasn't going to work. You hungry, son? I've got some eggs. Maybe some bacon. Tommy's stomach growled loudly, answering for him. The first attempt at scrambled eggs was a disaster. Hunter burned them black while trying to fry bacon at the same time. The smoke made Tommy cough, and Hunter felt like the worst guardian in the world. But Tommy didn't complain. He just said, my mama used to burn the eggs sometimes too. She said it gave them character. It was the first time Tommy had mentioned his parents, and Hunter's chest tightened. Tell me about your mama, he said gently, starting over with fresh eggs. She was real pretty, Tommy said, his voice soft. She had yellow hair like mine, and she read me stories every night. Papa had a bookstore, and there were books everywhere. Mama said I was going to be smart like Papa when I grew up. Hunter managed to get the second batch of eggs right, and he watched Tommy eat with the desperate hunger of a child who'd been hungry too long. What happened to them, Tommy? Do you remember? Tommy's face went sad, but he kept eating. There was a fire. Uncle Jake was visiting, and he fell asleep with his pipe. Everything burned up real fast. Mama and Papa couldn't get out. He paused, taking a shaky breath. Uncle Jake got out fine, though. He always did. The bitter tone in such a young voice broke Hunter's heart. Jake Morrison hadn't just sent Tommy away out of spite. He'd been covering up his own guilt. The man had killed his own sister and brother-in-law through his carelessness, and then couldn't bear to look at the child who reminded him of what he'd done. After breakfast, Hunter faced his next problem. He needed supplies, but he couldn't leave Tommy alone, and he wasn't sure how the town would react to seeing him with a child. Red Creek wasn't a big place, and everyone knew everyone else's business. By noon, the whole town would be talking. "We need to go into town," Hunter told Tommy. "You feel strong enough to ride with me?" Tommy nodded eagerly. It was the first time Hunter had seen real excitement in the boy's eyes. The ride into Red Creek took an hour, with Tommy sitting in front of Hunter on his horse. The boy was a natural rider, sitting straight and easy, not scared of the height or the horse's movement. "You've ridden before," Hunter observed. "Papa taught me," Tommy said proudly. "He said every gentleman should know how to ride proper. I had my own pony, but—" His voice trailed off, and Hunter understood. Everything Tommy had known was gone. Red Creek was busy for a Saturday morning. Families were doing their weekly shopping. Cowboys were getting supplies, and the usual group of old-timers sat outside Miller's General Store playing checkers. The talking stopped when Hunter dismounted with Tommy in his arms. Mrs. Patterson, the blacksmith's wife, was the first to approach. She was a good woman, but loved her gossip. "Hunter Wallace, whose child is this? I didn't know you were married." "I'm not married," Hunter said simply. "This is Tommy. He's staying with me for a while." He could feel the stairs and hear the whispers starting up behind him. Inside the store, Mr. Miller raised his eyebrows, but didn't ask questions right away. Hunter bought supplies with Tommy staying close to his side, one small hand gripping Hunter's coat. But Hunter realized he had no idea what a child needed. Clothes that would fit, different food, maybe some toys. "Tommy," he said quietly, "what do you need? What would make you more comfortable?" Tommy thought seriously about the question. "Maybe some clothes that fit, and a book, if they have any. I like stories." Hunter's respect for the boy grew. No demand for candy or toys, just practical needs and something to feed his mind. Dr. Fleming was in the store buying medicine, and he noticed Tommy right away. "That child looks thin," he said bluntly. "When's the last time you saw a doctor?" Hunter realized he didn't know. "Tommy, when did you last see a doctor?" "Not since before the fire," Tommy said. "Uncle Jake said doctors cost too much money." Dr. Fleming frowned. "Bring him by my office. No charge. I want to make sure he's healthy." An hour later, Hunter sat in Dr. Fleming's office while the doctor examined Tommy. The boy was underweight and showed signs of neglect, but nothing that good food and care couldn't fix. "He's been hungry for a while," Dr. Fleming said quietly to Hunter, "and scared. But he's a strong boy. Good bones, bright eyes. He'll recover." "What about his mind?" Hunter asked. "He seems different. Older than 5. Dr. Fleming smiled. "He's intelligent. Very intelligent. His vocabulary is remarkable for his age. Someone taught him well before all this happened." As they left the doctor's office, Hunter noticed how Tommy walked a little taller, a little more confident. Having someone official say he was going to be okay seemed to matter to the boy. That evening, back at the cabin, Hunter watched Tommy carefully sound out words from an old almanac Hunter had found in the store. The boy's concentration was intense, his finger following each word. "You read real well for someone so young," Hunter said. Tommy looked up proudly. "Mama taught me. She said reading was the most important thing a person could learn. She said books could take you anywhere, even when you couldn't leave home." Something in the way Tommy said it made Hunter think the boy understood more about his situation than most adults would guess. "Tommy, are you happy here? With me, I mean." Tommy considered the question seriously, the way he seemed to consider everything. "I was scared Uncle Jake would come back and take me away. But you're not mean like he said you'd be. You make sure I have food, and you don't yell, and you listen when I talk." He paused. "Are you going to keep me?" The question was asked so simply, but Hunter felt the weight of it. This child was trusting him with his whole future, his whole life. "If you want to stay, Tommy, then yes. I'll keep you." I'll take care of you as long as you need me to. Tommy's smile was like sunrise. I'd like that. I like that very much. He went back to his reading, but Hunter noticed he sat a little closer now, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. Later that night, after Tommy had fallen asleep, Hunter sat by the fire thinking about how much his life had changed in just 2 days. He'd gone from a man who rarely spoke to another human being to someone responsible for a child's happiness and future. It should have terrified him. Instead, it felt right in a way he couldn't explain. Tommy stirred in his sleep and called out, "Papa." Hunter's heart stopped. The boy was still asleep, probably dreaming about his real father. But something warm settled in Hunter's chest at the sound of that word. Maybe someday, Tommy would mean it for him. For now, it was enough to know the boy felt safe. It was enough to know that Jake Morrison's cruel joke was turning into the best thing that had ever happened to both of them. 2 weeks had passed since Tommy arrived, and Hunter was amazed at how quickly the boy had adapted to ranch life. Every morning, Tommy would wake up before Hunter even called him, eager to help with the chores. He was too small to do much heavy work, but he could gather eggs from the chicken coop and carry water buckets that weren't too full. What surprised Hunter most was how smart Tommy was about everything. The boy watched carefully, learned fast, and never had to be told something twice. "Hunter," Tommy said one morning as they fed the horses, "why do you think Uncle Jake really sent me here?" It was a question Hunter had been dreading, but he'd learned that Tommy deserved honest answers. Hunter leaned against the fence post, choosing his words carefully. "I think your uncle felt guilty about what happened to your parents, and seeing you reminded him of that guilt. Sometimes when people feel bad about something they did, they get angry instead of sad." Tommy nodded like this made perfect sense. That's what Mommy used to say about Papa when he got upset about the store not doing well. She said angry was just sad wearing a different coat. The wisdom coming from such a young child never stopped surprising Hunter. Tommy's parents had clearly raised him to think about things, to understand people and feelings in ways most adults never learned. That afternoon, while Hunter repaired a broken fence rail, Tommy sat nearby reading aloud from a book they'd gotten in town. His reading was getting stronger every day, and Hunter loved listening to the boy's clear voice telling stories. But today, Tommy stopped reading and looked up with serious eyes. "Hunter, can I tell you something that might make you mad?" Hunter set down his hammer. "Tommy, you can tell me anything. I promise I won't get mad at you." Tommy took a deep breath. The fire that killed Mama and Papa, it wasn't really an accident. Uncle Jake was drinking that night, and he got into a fight with Papa about money. Uncle Jake owed Papa money for a long time, but he kept spending it on whiskey instead of paying it back. That night, Papa said Uncle Jake couldn't borrow any more money, and Uncle Jake got real angry. Hunter's stomach tightened, but he kept his voice calm. What happened then? Uncle Jake threw his pipe at Papa, but it hit the curtains instead. The fire started real fast after that. Uncle Jake ran out right away, but Mama and Papa tried to save the books first. Tommy's voice got small. They loved those books more than anything. By the time they tried to get out, it was too late. Hunter felt rage building in his chest, but not at Tommy. At Jake Morrison, who had not only caused his sister's death through his drunken anger, but had then blamed a 5-year-old child for being a burden afterward. "Tommy," Hunter said carefully, "did you tell anyone else about this? About the fight and the pipe?" Tommy shook his head. "Uncle Jake said if I ever told anyone, he'd say I was lying and they'd put me in an orphanage where bad things happen to children. He said nobody would believe a little kid over a grown man." Hunter knelt down, so he was eye level with Tommy. "I believe you, and I want you to know that you're safe here. Uncle Jake can't hurt you anymore." That evening, Hunter made a decision. He rode into town alone, leaving Tommy safely with Mrs. Patterson, who had warmed up to the boy after seeing how polite and well-behaved he was. Hunter went straight to Sheriff Davis's office. "Jim," Hunter said, "I need to talk to you about something serious. About Tommy and why he's really here." Sheriff Davis listened carefully as Hunter told him everything About Jake's note, about Tommy's story of the fire, about the cruel plan to abandon the boy. When Hunter finished, the sheriff was quiet for a long moment. That's a serious accusation, Hunter. Jake Morrison causing his sister's death, then using the boy for revenge against you. I know it sounds hard to believe, but you know Tommy. You've seen him in town. Does that boy seem like a liar to you? Sheriff Davis shook his head. No, he doesn't. He's got the most honest eyes I've ever seen on a child. And what you're telling me, it fits with what I know about Jake Morrison. The man's got a mean streak when he's drinking. Jim, I want to adopt Tommy legally. Make it official. But I need to know if Jake can come back and cause trouble. The sheriff leaned back in his chair. I'll send some telegrams, see what I can find out about that fire in Kansas. If what Tommy says is true, and there were witnesses to that fight, Jake Morrison might be looking at more than just losing his nephew. Hunter felt relief wash over him. You'll help us? Hunter, I've seen you with that boy. You've changed. You're happy in a way I've never seen before. And Tommy's thriving. Any fool can see that. If Jake Morrison thinks he can use a child for his revenge games, he's got another think coming. When Hunter got back to the cabin, Tommy was already asleep, but he woke up when Hunter came in. Hunter, Tommy's sleepy voice called from the bed. Are you okay? You were gone a long time. Hunter sat on the edge of the bed. I'm fine, son. I was talking to the sheriff about making sure you can stay here permanently. About making you my son for real, legally. Tommy sat up quickly, suddenly wide awake. You want to adopt me? Like be my real papa? Hunter's heart clenched at the hope in Tommy's voice. If you want that, Tommy. If you'd like me to be your papa. Tommy threw his arms around Hunter's neck so fast it nearly knocked Hunter over. Yes, I want that more than anything. Then Tommy pulled back, his face suddenly worried. But what if Uncle Jake comes back? What if he tries to take me away? Hunter held Tommy close. He won't. The sheriff is going to help us make sure of that. You're going to be my son, Tommy. My real son. And nobody can change that. Tommy was quiet for a moment. Then he said softly, Can I call you Papa now? I mean, before it's official. Hunter felt his eyes get wet, and he didn't care. I'd be honored if you called me Papa. Papa, Tommy said, testing the word. Then he smiled the biggest smile Hunter had ever seen. Papa, I love you. I love you too, son. More than you'll ever know. The next morning brought news that changed everything. Sheriff Davis rode out to the cabin with a telegram in his hand and a grim expression on his face. Hunter, we've got a problem, the sheriff said. I heard back from Kansas. Jake Morrison is on his way here. Someone told him that Tommy's doing well, and now Jake's claiming he wants the boy back. Says he's had a change of heart and wants to honor his dead sister by raising her son. Hunter felt ice in his veins. That's a lie. He doesn't want Tommy. He just doesn't want to see him happy. I know that, and you know that, but Jake's got legal claim as the boy's only living relative. Until we can prove what really happened with that fire, or until you can get legal adoption papers, Jake can take Tommy whenever he wants. Tommy had been listening from the doorway, and now he ran to Hunter's side. Papa, I don't want to go with Uncle Jake. Please don't let him take me. Hunter put his arm around Tommy, pulling him close. I won't let that happen, son. I promise you, I won't let him take you. But even as Hunter said the words, he wondered if it was a promise he could keep. Jake Morrison was coming, and the law was on his side. Hunter had two choices: fight for Tommy in court, or run away with the boy and become fugitives. Looking down at Tommy's trusting face, Hunter knew he'd do whatever it took to protect his son, even if it meant losing everything else he had. The cruel trick was about to get a lot more dangerous. Jake Morrison rode into Red Creek on a Tuesday morning, and Hunter knew he was coming before he even saw him. The whole town went quiet in that particular way that meant trouble was brewing. Hunter was in Miller's store buying supplies when young Billy Patterson burst through the door, out of breath from running. Mr. Wallace, there's a man asking about you and Tommy. He's at the saloon, and he's already drinking even though it's not even noon yet. Hunter's blood ran cold. He'd been dreading this moment for 3 days, ever since Sheriff Davis had brought the telegram. What's he look like, Billy? Tall and skinny, with mean eyes and dirty clothes. He smells like whiskey, and he keeps laughing at nothing. Real scary laugh. That was Jake Morrison, all right. Hunter paid for his supplies quickly and headed home to get Tommy. Whatever was going to happen, he wanted the boys safe at the cabin first. But Jake was faster than Hunter expected. When Hunter rode up to his cabin, Jake Morrison was already there, sitting on Hunter's porch like he owned the place. He was older than Hunter remembered, thinner, with the gray skin and shaky hands of a man who drank too much. But his eyes were the same, cold and mean and full of hate. Tommy was nowhere to be seen, and Hunter's heart started pounding. "Where's the boy, Jake?" Jake grinned, showing yellowed teeth. "Relax, Hunter. He's inside, hiding under your bed like a scared rabbit." Poor little thing started crying the minute he saw his dear old Uncle Jake. Jake stood up slowly, swaying a little. "You know, I was surprised to hear how well you've been taking care of my nephew. Real surprised. He's not going back with you, Jake. That boy has a good life here." Jake's laugh was ugly. "Oh, but he's going back with me, Hunter. See, I've had time to think about things, and I realized I made a mistake. Tommy's my blood, my responsibility. His mama would want him with family, not some stranger who thinks he can play daddy." Hunter stepped closer, his hands clenched into fists. "You don't give a damn about that boy. You sent him out here hoping he'd die, or I'd abandon him. This isn't about Tommy. This is about you still being angry that I testified against you in Abilene." "Maybe it started that way," Jake admitted, still grinning. "But now I see how attached you've gotten to him. How much it would hurt you to lose him. That makes this even better. You're drunk, Jake, and you're not thinking straight. Tommy told me what really happened the night of the fire. About the fight you had with his father, about how you threw that lit pipe." Jake's grin disappeared. That boy's got quite an imagination. But who's going to believe a 5-year-old over his grieving uncle? Especially when that uncle has legal papers showing he's the boy's guardian. Jake pulled a folded document from his coat. "Got this from a judge in Kansas. Official custody papers. Tommy Morrison is coming home with me, and there's not a damn thing you can do about it." Hunter heard a small sound from inside the cabin and turned to see Tommy peeking around the doorframe. The boy's face was white with fear, and he was shaking all over. "Uncle Jake," Tommy said in a tiny voice, "I don't want to go with you. Please, I want to stay with Papa." Jake's face twisted with anger. "Papa? You calling this man Papa? Your real Papa is dead, boy, and don't you forget it. You're coming with me right now." "No." Tommy ran to Hunter's side, grabbing onto his leg. "Papa, don't let him take me. He hurts me when he drinks, and he says mean things about Mama and real Papa." Jake stepped forward, reaching for Tommy, but Hunter moved between them. "You're not taking him anywhere, Jake. Not today, not ever. You gonna stop me, Hunter? You gonna fight the law? Because that's what you'd be doing. Fighting the law." Jake waved the papers again. "I'm his legal guardian, and I'm taking him home." "This is his home now," Hunter said firmly. "Tommy's happy here. He's healthy and safe and loved. Why would you want to change that?" Jake's eyes went even colder. "Because it hurts you. Because every day you have to wonder if I'm coming back to take him away. Because I want you to know what it feels like to lose something you care about." The pure cruelty in Jake's voice made Hunter see red. This man didn't care about Tommy at all. He was just using a child to cause pain, the same way he'd used Tommy as a pawn 3 weeks ago. "Tommy," Hunter said without taking his eyes off Jake, "go inside and pack your things. Just in case." "No, Papa, I won't go. Just pack them, son. Everything will be okay." Tommy ran inside, and Hunter could hear him crying. The sound broke Hunter's heart, but he needed the boy out of the way for what was coming next. "You know what I think, Jake?" Hunter said, stepping closer. "I think you're scared. Scared that if people find out the truth about that fire, you'll end up in prison where you belong. So you're trying to get Tommy away from anyone who might believe his story." Jake's hand moved toward his gun, but Hunter was faster. In one smooth motion, Hunter grabbed Jake by the shirt and slammed him against the porch post. "You draw on me, and I'll break your arm. And if you ever threaten that boy again, I'll do worse than that." Jake struggled, but Hunter was stronger and sober. You can't keep him forever. Hunter, I got the law on my side. And when I take him back to Kansas, I'm going to make sure he knows it's all your fault. Gonna tell him every day how his precious papa gave up on him. Hunter let go of Jake so suddenly that the man stumbled. Get off my land, Jake. Now, I'll be back tomorrow with the sheriff, Hunter. And when I come back, I'm taking my nephew home. Jake straightened his coat and tried to look dignified, but the effect was ruined by his unsteady walk and slurred words. As Jake rode away, Tommy came running out of the cabin. Papa, is he gone? Is he really gone? Hunter caught Tommy in his arms and held him tight. The boy was shaking like a leaf, and Hunter could feel wetness on his shirt where Tommy's tears were soaking through. He's gone for now, son. But Tommy, I need you to be brave. Uncle Jake has legal papers that say you belong with him. We're going to have to fight this in court. Tommy pulled back to look at Hunter's face. What if we lose? What if the judge makes me go with him? Hunter looked into those blue eyes, so full of trust and fear, and made a promise he hoped he could keep. If we lose in court, Tommy, then we'll figure out something else. But I'm not giving up on you. Ever. You're my son now, and I'll fight for you with everything I have. Tommy nodded, try to be brave. I'll fight too, Papa. I'll tell them the truth about Uncle Jake and the fire and everything. I know you will, son. You're the bravest boy I know. But as Hunter held his son close, he couldn't shake the fear that was growing in his chest. Jake had legal papers and blood relation on his side. All Hunter had was love and 3 weeks of being a father. In the eyes of the law, that might not be enough. The courtroom in Red Creek had never been so full. It seemed like half the town had come to see what would happen to Tommy. Hunter sat at one table with Sheriff Davis, who was helping him with the legal papers. At the other table, Jake Morrison sat alone, still smelling like whiskey, even though it was only 10 in the morning. Judge Matthews was a fair man, but he was also old-fashioned. He believed in family, in blood ties, and in the law. Hunter wasn't sure that would work in Tommy's favor. This is a custody hearing, Judge Matthews announced. Mr. Morrison claims legal guardianship of his nephew, Thomas Morrison. Mr. Wallace contests this claim. Mr. Morrison, you may present your case first. Jake stood up, swaying slightly. Your Honor, Tommy is my nephew, my dead sister's boy. Family should stay with family. This man Wallace is a stranger who has no right to keep my blood relative from me. And why did you leave the child with Mr. Wallace in the first place? The judge asked. Jake's face flushed. I was grieving, Your Honor. Not thinking straight after my sister died. I thought maybe the boy needed some time away from the sadness. But now I see I made a mistake. The boy belongs with me. Hunter watched Jake lie smoothly to the judge and felt his anger rising. But Sheriff Davis put a warning hand on his arm. Mr. Wallace, the judge said, why do you believe you should have custody of this child? Hunter stood up, his heart pounding. Your Honor, I've been caring for Tommy for 3 weeks now. In that time, he's gained weight, learned to read better, and most importantly, he's happy and safe. Jake Morrison didn't bring Tommy to me out of kindness. He abandoned him, hoping something bad would happen. That's a serious accusation, Mr. Wallace. Do you have proof? Hunter pulled out Jake's original note. This is what Mr. Morrison wrote when he left Tommy. It says Tommy is a burden and calls the whole thing a joke. The judge read the note, his face growing stern. Mr. Morrison, did you write this? Jake shifted uncomfortably. I was drunk and grieving, Your Honor. People say things they don't mean when they're hurting. Your Honor, Sheriff Davis stood up. I'd like to call Dr. Fleming to testify about Tommy's condition when he arrived. Dr. Fleming took the witness chair and spoke clearly. The child was malnourished, dehydrated, and showed signs of neglect. He's thrived under Mr. Wallace's care. I've never seen such improvement in a child's health and spirits. And I'd like Mrs. Patterson to testify about what she's observed, Sheriff Davis continued. Mrs. Patterson stood up in the gallery. Your Honor, I've watched Hunter Wallace with that boy. He's patient and kind, and Tommy adores him. The child was terrified when Jake Morrison showed up yesterday. That kind of fear doesn't come from nowhere. Your Honor, Hunter said, I'd like Tommy to speak for himself. He's old enough to say where he wants to live. Jake jumped up. You can't put a 5-year-old on the witness stand. He doesn't know what's best for him. Mr. Morrison, the judge said sternly, sit down. Tommy, would you like to tell me what you want? Tommy stood up in the front row, holding tight to Hunter's hand. His voice was small but clear. I want to stay with Papa Hunter. Uncle Jake scares me. He drinks too much and says mean things. He told me Papa was mean, but Papa takes care of me and reads to me and makes me feel safe. Tommy, the judge said gently, do you remember what happened the night your parents died? Tommy's voice got even smaller, but he didn't back down. Uncle Jake was fighting with Papa about money. He threw his pipe and it hit the curtains. That's what started the fire. Mama and Papa died trying to save their books. Jake stood up angrily. The boy's making that up. He was traumatized. He doesn't remember right. Uncle Jake told me never to tell anyone. Tommy continued, because no one would believe me. But Papa Hunter believes me. Papa Hunter says I should always tell the truth. Judge Matthews was quiet for a long moment, studying both men. Then he looked at Tommy, who was standing straight and brave despite his fear. I've heard enough, the judge finally said. Mr. Morrison, your note makes it clear you abandoned this child out of spite, not love. Dr. Fleming's testimony shows the child was neglected in your care. And most importantly, the child himself has expressed a clear preference. Hunter held his breath. Custody of Thomas Morrison is awarded to Hunter Wallace. Mr. Morrison, you are ordered to stay away from both Mr. Wallace and the child. This court also recommends that Kansas authorities investigate the circumstances of the fire that killed the child's parents. Tommy threw his arms around Hunter's waist. We won, Papa. We really won. Jake Morrison stumbled out of the courtroom, muttering threats that no one took seriously. The townspeople crowded around Hunter and Tommy, offering congratulations and support. Sheriff Davis shook Hunter's hand. You did good, Hunter. Both of you did good. Hunter looked down at Tommy, who was beaming up at him with pure joy. So what do we do now, son? Now we go home, Papa. We go home and live happily ever after. Hunter laughed and picked up his boy. Jake Morrison's cruel trick had backfired completely. Instead of causing pain, he'd given Hunter the greatest gift of his life, a son to love and protect forever. 1 year after the court hearing, Hunter Wallace stood on his porch watching his son Tommy chase chickens around the yard. The boy had grown 3 inches and put on 15 pounds of healthy weight. His laugh echoed across the prairie as he tried to corner a particularly stubborn hen who had no interest in going back to her coop. Tommy, Hunter called out, let that poor bird be and come help me with the fence posts. Yes, Papa. Tommy ran over, his face flushed with happiness and exertion. At 6 years old, he was still small for his age, but he was strong and healthy. More importantly, the constant fear that had lived in his eyes when he first arrived was completely gone. The past year had been the best of Hunter's life. Tommy had started school in the fall, and his teacher, Miss Sarah, constantly marveled at how bright he was. He could read books meant for children twice his age, and his arithmetic was better than some of the older students. But more than his intelligence, Tommy had developed a confidence that made Hunter's heart swell with pride. Papa, Tommy said as they worked on mending the fence, Jimmy Patterson asked me if I remember my real parents. I told him you're my real papa, but he said that's not the same thing. Hunter set down his hammer and knelt beside Tommy. These conversations still came up sometimes, and Hunter had learned to handle them carefully. What do you think, son? Do you remember your first mama and papa? Tommy nodded seriously. I remember them a little. Mama had pretty yellow hair, and Papa smelled like books. They loved me very much, but they had to go to heaven when the fire happened. That's right, and they would be very happy to know that you're safe and loved now. I know they would, Tommy said with a matter-of-fact wisdom that still amazed Hunter. But you're my papa now, the one who takes care of me and teaches me things and makes sure I'm not scared at night. Hunter felt that familiar tightness in his chest that came whenever Tommy said things like that. And you're my son, forever and always. They worked in comfortable silence for a while, but Hunter could tell something was on Tommy's mind. Finally, the boy spoke up again. Papa, remember when I first came here? I was so scared and hungry, and I thought you might send me away. I remember, but I could never have sent you away, Tommy. Even from that first night, something in my heart knew you belonged here. Tommy grinned. Uncle Jake thought he was being mean to both of us, didn't he? But really, he gave us each other. It still amazed Hunter how clearly Tommy understood things that most adults would struggle with. That's exactly right, son. Sometimes the worst things that happen to us turn out to be blessings in disguise. Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of hoofbeats. Sheriff Davis was riding up the trail with someone Hunter didn't recognize, a thin, tired-looking woman about 30 years old, leading a horse with a small figure slumped in the saddle. Hunter, Tommy, Sheriff Davis called out. We've got a situation here that I thought you might want to know about. As they got closer, Hunter could see that the small figure was a child, maybe 7 or 8 years old, wearing clothes that were too big and too dirty. The child's head was down, and even from a distance, Hunter could see the exhaustion and defeat in the small shoulders. This is Mrs. Rebecca Chun, Sheriff Davis said, dismounting. She's been traveling with her nephew here, trying to get to her sister in California. But she's run out of money, and the boy, well, he's not her real nephew. Mrs. Chun looked embarrassed but determined. I found little Marcus 3 weeks ago, hiding in an alley in Denver. He won't tell me his real name or where he came from. He's been hurt, I think. Scared of everyone, especially men. I've been trying to help him, but I can't afford to feed 2 people, and my sister doesn't know I'm bringing him. Hunter looked at the child, Marcus, who still hadn't raised his head. Something about the boy's posture, the way he seemed to be trying to disappear, reminded Hunter powerfully of the day he'd first found Tommy. Marcus, Hunter said gently, would you like to get down from that horse? You look tired. The boy finally looked up, and Hunter's heart clenched. Marcus had dark hair and brown eyes, but the fear and exhaustion in his face was exactly the same as Tommy's had been a year ago. Tommy stepped forward, his natural kindness taking over. It's okay, he told Marcus. This is my papa, and he's the kindest man in the whole world. He helps people who are scared and hungry. Marcus slid down from the horse but stayed close to Mrs. Chun. I don't want to be any trouble, he whispered. I can work. I can earn my keep. Hunter knelt down, so he was at Marcus's eye level, just like he had with Tommy that first day. How old are you, son? 8, I think. Maybe 7. I don't remember exactly. And you don't have anywhere to go? Marcus shook his head. My folks died in a mine collapse. I've been on my own since then. Hunter looked up at Mrs. Chun. How far are you from your sister's place? Still got 2 weeks of hard riding ahead of us, at least. And like I said, I'm nearly out of money for food. Hunter stood up and put his hand gently on Marcus's shoulder. The boy flinched but didn't pull away. Mrs. Chun, what if Marcus stayed here with us? Just until you get settled with your sister. Then if you want to come back for him, you can. But if not, well, Tommy and I have plenty of room for another boy who needs a family. Tommy's face lit up. Marcus could be like my little brother. I could teach him to read and show him how to take care of the chickens. Mrs. Chun looked relieved. Are you sure? He's been through a lot. He has nightmares, and he doesn't talk much, and he's afraid of loud noises. Hunter smiled. Ma'am, a year ago someone dropped off a scared, hungry boy on my doorstep, thinking it would ruin my life. Instead, it gave me the greatest joy I've ever known. I think I can handle another one. That evening, after Mrs. Chun had continued on her journey, Hunter sat by the fire watching his 2 boys. Tommy was patiently showing Marcus how to write letters in the dirt with a stick, his voice gentle and encouraging. Marcus was still skittish, but he was watching Tommy with something that might have been hope. Papa, Tommy said as Hunter tucked him to bed later, Marcus reminds me of me when I first came here. Do you think we can help him the way you helped me? Hunter smoothed Tommy's hair back from his forehead. I think we can try, son. What do you think? Are you ready to be a big brother? Tommy's smile was radiant. I've been practicing for a whole year, haven't I? Hunter laughed and kissed Tommy's forehead. Yes, you have, and you're going to be wonderful at it. As Hunter settled down by the fire, with both boys sleeping peacefully nearby, he thought about how much his life had changed. 2 years ago, he'd been a lonely bachelor with nothing but his ranch and his horses. Now he was a father to one boy and about to become a father to another. Jake Morrison had meant to destroy Hunter's life by abandoning Tommy on his doorstep. Instead, he'd given Hunter a family and a purpose he never knew he needed. And now, it seemed like the universe was giving Hunter another chance to save a child who needed saving. Some people might call it coincidence. Hunter preferred to think of it as destiny. He was meant to be a father, meant to give love and safety to children who had nowhere else to turn. Tommy had been just the beginning. Outside, the wind whispered across the prairie, carrying with it the promise of new beginnings and second chances. Hunter closed his eyes and smiled, knowing that tomorrow would bring new adventures with his growing family. The cruel trick had become the greatest blessing of his life, and now that blessing was growing even bigger. In his sleep, Tommy reached out and took Marcus's hand, and Marcus didn't pull away. Hunter saw it and knew that everything was going to be all right.